What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Ben on Sports. And as you can see, even though the NFL season has started, it is still NASCAR season. I still have the NASCAR weekly predictions coming your way. This week is week 2 of the playoffs at Gateway in the Illinois side suburbs of St. Louis. Let's get into it. Storylines. Well, the number one is Briscoe flat out dominated Darlington. 309 laps led of 367 laps, both stages, and the race win. 60 total points. Not that the points matter in the playoffs once you win a race. For those of you who don't know, however, any stage wins or race wins, the playoff points you require do transfer over to the second round. So Chase Briscoe, that is, not Stage Briscoe. Chase Briscoe will be collecting 7 playoff points after this dominating performance to help him in the second round, but he is locked in to the round of 12 in the playoffs. And I gotta be honest, the first time Chase Briscoe's ever really dominated a race before, and we haven't seen somebody dominate a race like this season in a long time. And I don't think we've seen somebody dominate a race like this and win. Maybe Kyle Larson earlier in the year, but this year, because it's been so wide open and or at least it's felt wide open and anybody can win. Nobody has hit 5 wins yet. All of this stuff, it's just kind of like we haven't seen a lot of domination, and Chase Briscoe certainly changed that this week at Darlington. Rough day for a lot of playoff drivers, however. Most of Hendrick's camp had rough days. Kyle Larson was able to get some stage points, but didn't finish well. Chase Elliott got caught out on strategy, or maybe he had a better finish. William Byron, who dominated the first 2 stages of this race in the spring, outside of the top 20, right? Like finished deep in the pack, just didn't have speed all day. Bowman, his troubles were well documented, and so the best team in NASCAR having a rough week. Not just them, Shane Van Gisbergen, rough week, not the performance he needed, as he's already cut into much of the buffer that he built in for himself. Even some Team Penske cars that have been fast at Darlington didn't have too much speed. Most notably, Ryan Blaney. Logano just had an okay day. You think Bubba Wallace and Denny Hamlin were really fast and could have competed for the race had they not had bad pit stop issues and gone towards the back. Just a lot of playoff drivers having rough days. It was a day of execution, and Tyler Reddick and Chase Briscoe executed the best. Chase Briscoe moves on to the next round, and Tyler Reddick goes from the wrong side of the cut line to very, very well to the good, and one of the top playoff drivers seated on points going into Gateway. So yes, rough day for a lot of playoff drivers, but the ones who executed are in pretty good shape. Speaking of Hendrick, are they in trouble this round? Now, I will say Hendrick is still the best team in NASCAR, and usually when their back is up against the wall, they find a way to fight out of it. And because of that, I think that they might have more speed than people think this week. But the last 3 races in the next-gen car at this track, they've not been very fast. Kyle Larson's been good, but everybody else has kind of just been eh. Hendrick has not been one of the faster teams at Gateway since it came back on the schedule. They just had a rough week last week at Darlington, a place where they normally have speed. That's 2 out of the 3 weeks of the first round. They could be in some trouble if they don't start fighting their way back off of this rock from in between a rock and a hard place here. I think Hendrick, again, I think they step up when it matters. I think they can definitely step up this weekend and get some of their drivers in a much better points position than they're in right now. But if they don't, they could be in some trouble facing multiple guys with elimination. I already said it. SVG has lost his cushion. That's the big thing, right? Can he make the round of 8? Is his cushion big? Was his cushion going to be big enough to get him into the round of 12 where he could potentially win a road course? Well, he's now only 3 points to the good. So I think it's going to take a tremendous effort that a lot of that people aren't necessarily seeing out of him to advance to the round of 12. Will there be a non-playoff driver who win a race? You saw Eric Jones at the end of that race was probably the fastest car. Both legacy cars were top 5 and had very good races. And remember, just because you're not in the playoffs doesn't mean you can't win a race and make your season better. Prove that you still have some speed. Guys, like all 3 guys in RFK would love to do that, right? I think we definitely will see a non-playoff driver win a race, even if it's a road course ringer at uh, the Roval, if it's somebody at Talladega, that's a good super speedway racer, or even at a track like New Hampshire, where some of the teams that didn't make the playoffs but usually a pretty fast win. I think somebody finds a way that did not make the playoffs to win a race, and maybe mess it up for some people, or maybe just make it so that the guys who are the best on points continue to advance. And the biggest non-racetrack news that I'm going to cover this week: Haas is moving to Chevy and aligning with Hendrick Motorsports. The Xfinity Series, or the new to be O'Reilly Series, this will get really interesting because they're the main Ford for that second level of NASCAR, and there ain't a really top tier team in Ford team that's in the Xfinity Series. So it'll be very interesting to see if any of those teams move over to Ford and what that situation is. Don't forget Haas, back when it was Stewart Haas Racing, before Tony Stewart left and they sold all those charters. In the early days, Stewart Haas Racing, obviously they've become Haas Factory Team now, but Stewart Haas Racing was aligned with Hendrick and was Chevy, and they won both of their championships in the 2010s with Chevy before switching to Ford. So this could be, maybe it's a good move for them. Maybe they're hoping for the same success that Josh Berry has had, in the 21 Wood Brothers cars had since aligning with Penske. Maybe they're hoping this can kind of just be the extra Hendrick car, and Cole Custer can, he's won Kentucky before. Maybe he can start winning some other races. Definitely interesting to keep an eye on. Will this function as a fifth Hendrick car, or is it just going to be a loose alliance and they still have to find speed themselves? Who knows? But definitely important to watch next season. History at Gateway, been 3 next-gen races. And the winners, Joey Logano, Kyle Busch, and Austin Cindric. Pretty diverse group. 2 of those, as you see, are playoff drivers who both happen to race for Penske. So clearly Penske has a good acumen racing on this course, and when you go over to best average finish, they have the first, second, and best average finish with their drivers. Logano averaging a third place finish with a first, third, and fifth in the next gen. Cindric averaging an 8.3, Larson an 8.7, Christopher Bell a 9, and Ryan Blaney an 11.3. Most top fives at this track. Again, Joey Logano, all 3 times he's finished in the top 5. 2 drivers tied at 2, Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin actually has 2 second-place finishes, and then 7 drivers have 1. Kurt Busch, retired. Truex Jr., retired. Eric Almirola, retired. But then Austin Cindric, Kyle Larson, Ryan Blaney, Brad Keselowski, and Tyler Reddick, all with at least 1 top 5 in the next gen. So a lot of variance, I'll say here. A lot of different drivers have found themselves in the top 5 in just 3 races. A total of 8 or 10 drivers have gotten a top 5 finish, and only 3 of them multiple. So this is kind of a high variance racetrack, and I think it's possible we see see people we're not expecting running up front, kind of like this week at Darlington, I would say, or last week at Darlington. And then most top 10s, Logano 3, and then 6 drivers are tied at 2: Christopher Bell, Denny Hamlin, Kyle Larson, Ryan Blaney, Ryan Truex Jr., and Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch, hasn't won a race in a long time, didn't make the playoffs, but this has been one of his better tracks, arguably his best track since moving to RCR in the next-gen car. Maybe he can end his super long winless drought this week and, upset playoff drivers looking to advance their way with a win. Favorites to win Gateway. Team rankings. Team Penske, I think it's pretty obvious, but Team Penske has to be up there. I guess this includes Josh Berry. He's technically Wood Brothers. I don't know if I think Josh Berry is going to be fast this weekend or not, but Josh Berry has proven to be fast at tracks where Penske is fast, so maybe Wood Brothers should be included in here. But for now, I'm just going to leave it at Team Penske. They're the favorites to win this week. And with Joey Logano below the cut line, even if it's only by 3 points, he could go from below the cut line to start the race to winning the race and locking himself in. Joe Gibbs Racing. Denny Hamlin has some good finishes. Christopher Bell does. Martin Truex does. Joe Gibbs Racing, I think they also are good for this flat type of track, good at that type of racing. Uh, Joe Gibbs Racing, I think, is the second likely favorite to win this week. Also coming in with a little bit of momentum as a entire race team. Hendrick Motorsports, they're never not going to be a top five team. Listen, like, yeah, maybe they don't have some great results, especially outside of Kyle Larson on this track. But guys, Hendrick Motorsports is a good team. They're they've been around forever. They've won a lot of championships. They've won the most races as a race team in the history of the sport for a reason. Um, Even if they haven't looked good somewhere in recent years, I still think they find a way to be fast, and I think that's very well in the works this weekend. Hendrick Motorsports, while they're not my first, second favorite, I do think they find some extra speed this week. 23XI, both Reddick and Wallace have had good weeks last week. They both have shown speed a lot recently. Kurt Busch was fast here when he was in the 45, the first Gateway race. Tyler Reddick in the 45 has also been fast here. And while Bubba Wallace hasn't necessarily had a good result here, he's super hot as of late, one of the hottest drivers in the sport. And I don't think that it's far-fetched to think he could have the best run of his career at this track this weekend. And then I'll go ahead and give RCR a nod because Kyle Busch is RCR is one of the only two teams to have won here. Kyle Busch performs well here. I think if RCR is faster than any type of track, it's these flat, shorter tracks. Now, most of the flat tracks are fast that are less than a mile. This is over a mile. I still think it'll translate for RCR. Hopefully, if you're RCR, you really want it to translate for Austin Dillon, but I see Kyle Busch having some speed this weekend. Individual driver rankings. Well, it's hard not to have the person with one win and the best average finish. Number one, Joe Logano, favorite to win this week in my eyes. Denny Hamlin, second. He has one bad finish, and then two, like I said, second place finishes. Denny was fast last week. Denny's usually fast at ovals. Look out for Denny Hamlin. Kyle Larson needs some momentum. He was the best Hendrick car last week, even though he didn't have the best finish. Eventually, you got to think this 5 team is going to start bringing it again. They have a top 5 average finish at this track in 3 races. Again, back against the wall for Hendrick in some senses. I think Kyle Larson figures it out this weekend. I'll go ahead and give Kyle Busch number 4. It's not much history, but in the history that does exist, Kyle Busch is pretty good at this track. And I think, in a year where a lot has gone wrong for them, maybe the karma, maybe the luck finally evens out. And Kyle Busch finally has a good week. I think that's likely. Look out for Kyle Busch to be competing for a top 10 and even potentially a win. Ryan Blaney. I was talking about Penske's acumen at this track. Ryan Blaney shouldn't have won a race, ran out of gas here, and then his teammate Austin Cindric won. Ryan Blaney didn't have a great week last week. Doesn't necessarily need a win to get in, but a win would make you feel a lot better. Ryan Blaney definitely should at least have a good points day this week. Christopher Bell, a top 5 average finish on this track, still has not won a race since March. Not a points-paying race, that is. I still think they have championship potential. Christopher Bell and that 20 team need to get it figured out. Again, they've been fast at this track, and before they've had decent finishes before, but they're only 10 points up on the cut line after a bad week last week. They need a good week, and I think they get it. Austin Cindric had a better week than I was expecting to have last week. He's on the points. He's good. He's won at this track. He's fast at this track. Austin Cindric, with another good week, could put himself in prime position to advance past the round of 16. And then a group of 3 Toyotas that were fast last week, including Chase Briscoe, the winner, who Tyler Reddick has had a good run here, but in Chase Briscoe and Bubba Wallace's case, they haven't, but they've been fast this year. They're really, really hot. I think both Briscoe and Wallace could have their best days they've had in their short career at Gateway this weekend. Toyota, I think, will bring some speed. Toyota is usually pretty good at this type of track. And Tyler Reddick is so close to that first win with another second-place finish last week. I think 23XI is heating up at the right time. I think 23XI wants to show NASCAR something with all the legal stuff going on. And for that reason, I have those 3 drivers as 8th, 9th, and 10th most likely to win at this track. Current playoff standings, Chase Briscoe has the most playoff points, but the points don't matter for Chase Briscoe. You know why he's yellow? Because he's won a race and locked himself into the round of 12. Nobody else has clinched their way in on points. Sometimes that does happen during the second race of a round. Denny Hamlin, 43 points up on the cut line. He just needs to avoid disaster and he should be good. Kyle Larson, 38 up. Tyler Reddick, 35 up. Those three guys just need two solid races in a row and they'll be fine on points. Bubba Wallace, plus 25. William Byron, plus 25. Bubba Wallace is technically ahead of William Byron because he has the better finish. Ryan Blaney, plus 22. Ross Chastain, plus 21. And then there's kind of a gap, right? These top 8 drivers, one of them has clinched his way in, and the other ones are plus 20 up, which if you are having just decent, putting together solid days, it's going to be hard to make that up unless somebody has a really, really good day, which not everybody behind them can. So, if they have more comfortable stuff, avoid your DNFs, avoid going a lap down, and get points when you can. And I think everybody in this first state should be okay. And then Austin Cindric is in 9th, 12 points up. Christopher Bell is in 10th, only 11 points up. Chase Elliott is 11th, only 9 points up. And Shane Van Gisbergen right now in the last transfer spot with a 3-point advantage. The 4 drivers below the cut line, Joe Logano, -3 to the cut line in 13th. Dylan is -8. And then Bowman and Barry both are -19 to the cut line. Oof. Am I right? If you're Bowman or Barry, it might take a win. You have to make up 19 points, which is possible, but it's not just making up 19 points. It's passing multiple people on your way. So it's making up a lot of points on multiple drivers, and that's hard to do. Both of those guys might need a win, or they're going to need some really, really good point days. I think 40-plus point days back-to-back to have a chance if they're not going to win. Guys like Bell and Elliott, Elliott's won a championship. Bell has been a Final Four contender before, and most of the season looked like he should be one. They're only 11 and 9 points up on the cut line, respectively. They have a bad day. They're going to be in serious jeopardy of not advancing. Both of those drivers desperately need a good day, which if you're Hendrick Motorsports and you're Chase Elliott and you haven't run particularly well here the last 3 years, the alarm bell should be going off. Again, I like them with the back up against the wall most of the time. But yes, I think as long as the top 8 guys just run solid and okay, avoid big mistakes, I think they should advance. It's really, I think the battle's really going to come down to for the 12 spots for the guys in the second half of points. But yeah, here's your current playoff standings. And I think mathematically speaking, some of these guys that are high in points, like Denny Hamlin and Kyle Larson, might be able to clinch their way on points during this race because there's a lot of guys behind them and not all of them can pass them on points. So as long as they get up enough in points on enough drivers, then it'll lock them in as well. And then finally, everybody's favorite part of the episode, the power rankings. These might be a little bit more reactive since it's just for the playoffs and it's playoff drivers and the recent results. Chase Briscoe after last week has to be number 1, just absolutely whooped the field's butt last week. Chase Briscoe, number 1. It's also the only one that's locked into the round of 8. Everybody else still has to fight their way there. Denny Hamlin probably could have competed for a winner, had a little bit better result, still had a pretty good points day. He's second in points, second in power rankings. Tyler Reddick showed a lot of speed. He may not be third in points, but you don't necessarily have to be where you're ranked in points. Tyler Reddick had a lot of speed. I think he could have some speed this week. Maybe that team will finally figure out how to be at the front consistently and avoid some mistakes. Tyler Reddick, third in the power rankings. After we talk about Chase Briscoe being first in both stages and winning, Tyler Reddick was second in stage 1, second in stage 2, and finished second in the race. So he was right there behind Chase Briscoe. Kyle Larson in 4th. Didn't have a great day, but had a big points advantage. He's been good at Gateway, which is the track we're going into. I think it's self-explanatory why he's 4th. He's still one of the better drivers, and I still feel like this team can turn it on at any minute and put themselves right in the thick of the championship battle. William Byron with a rough week, dropping all the way down to 5th. He's even lower than that in the points, but he's still your regular season points champion. He still uh, is a championship contender. Just had a bad week. Hopefully they rebound this week, even if their historical numbers aren't great here. Still think that it's more than possible. Look out for William Byron. Ryan Blaney had a rough week last week. Still has a decently fine points advantage, but he's going into a track where he's been really, really good. And even if he doesn't win, which I think he's one of the favorites to win, but even if he doesn't win, I still think he's going to be can have a great points day and put himself in great position on points this week. Bubba Wallace with a good run, lots of points, giving him quite a nice cushion. He's slowly moving up the power rankings. He's stacking together a lot of good finishes, it feels like, for the last 2 months now. And I think this 23 team is starting to find a rhythm, which could mean a playoff run incoming. Christopher Bell, I still have an eighth. I was tempted to drop him lower, but I still think as a team they're better than some of these guys behind them. They have been good at at the track they're going to, which can maybe help build some of that points lead back up. Christopher Bell all the way down in eighth. Austin Cindric had a good week last week. He's now up to ninth in points. Has a double-digit cushion, even if it's not by much, going to a track that he's the most recent winner of. Austin Cindric, somebody to watch out for. Maybe Austin Cindric can make a deeper playoff run than I originally thought. Still not willing to change his color or his category. I still think he is somebody who won a race that will not make a deep playoff run with the guys that have 14, 15, and 16, but more on them later. Joey Logano, just kind of okay. Didn't lose a lot of points, didn't gain a lot of points, just kind of stayed where he was. I guess he technically fell below the cut line, but he also gained points to some of the people in front of him. Interesting situation for Mr. Logano. Everybody knows what one win can do for Joey Logano, especially in the playoffs. It can always be a jumping off point for a championship run. Joey Logano, the defending series champion, has now cracked the top 10 in the playoff driver power rankings. Joey Logano has the best stats at this track. I don't want to. You can't drop him too low, even though he is below the cut line. It's only 3 points, and if anybody can make up points at this track, it's Joey Logano. Ross Chastain with a better day than I thought he was going to have. He still is so uneven on speed. He has some good runs at Gateway. He has some bad runs at Gateway. Really one of each, and then one just okay day. Which track house shows up this week? Is it going to be a fast track house or a slow track house? And because Ross Chastain and track house has so much unevenness, it's hard for me to keep him too high up. But Ross Chastain is in a good spot going to a track where he has had, let's just say, some interesting things happen in his career. Chase Elliott, I'm dropping all the way down to the 12th. I still think that the 9 can be a championship caliber team, but they are ice cold. Lots of bad weeks in a row. And that's why they're down here. They almost were the regular season champion, but if you take out the Daytona race, most of their last month to 6 weeks has not been very good. They desperately need to get the momentum fixed and going in the right way. In a track where they're not really anywhere close in average finish and all of the other metrics to being a top 10 to 15 car. Not the 9 team has a lot of work they want to do if they want to avoid losing even more points. I still like them to advance, but I think it's getting incredibly close. I still have Alex Bowman at 13, even though he's down there. I think Alex Bowman is a better driver. I think Alex Bowman in the 48 is a better team than the 3 drivers below them, but they are in a dire situation. They're 19 points back going into a track they haven't performed well at. That is not a good mixture. You don't want to put yourselves in a win-to-advance situation. No matter how good at Bristol you are with Hendrick Motorsports, you cannot be putting yourself in that situation. Bowman needs to have a big points day and try and close the gap to the cut line. Shane Van Gisbergen had a much nicer lead going in the Darlington than he has now. Honestly, while Shane Van Gisbergen didn't have a good day, he's lucky a lot of other guys didn't have a good day. He's now only 3 points to the good with no other drivers in between him and the cut line. I think he falls below the cut line this week, barring something spectacular. The 88 team is in trouble of not advancing. They are going to have to arguably shock the world and do what a lot of people have said they're not capable of doing. Austin Dillon, his teammate has been fast here. Dillon, though, without that win, was so far back on points. He doesn't have speed at so many tracks. It's hard to trust him. I'm going to put him at 15. Maybe if they can find what worked for Kyle Busch 2 years ago, their teammate, maybe Austin Dillon can shock the world and win this week, but which truly would be shocking the world. But without it, I don't know if they're going to be able to point their way to the next round. And then you have Josh Berry, who could make me look very stupid for having him all the way down here in 16. I mentioned it earlier. That Penske Association is huge for that team. Huge for that team. But will he have the same speed? If he has the same speed, he could really help his point situation out, potentially even win the race. If they don't have that same speed, then I think that they're slowly just going to fall deeper into the abyss. Although Bristol, Josh Berry's pretty good at Bristol. That's his home track. So in a lot of ways, so he obviously made it big in the Xfinity Series by winning there. So, maybe Josh Berry just has to keep it close enough on points, and then he can point his way in Bristol. Who knows? But again, those Van Gisbergen and Dillon and Berry, I think, are all guys that won a race this year, and Cindric has performed a little bit better than them, so I don't want to quite drag him down to that level. But they're all the same color because I don't think they're threats to make a deep playoff run. I think they won to get their way in, and other than that, they're not massive threats. The only other change in color this week, well, there hasn't been any other changes in color. The only change in color is I moved Chase Briscoe to a dark green because after that performance and the fact that Briscoe has been the best driver in NASCAR, I feel like for the last 2 months plus, I think that I am convinced that team can be a playoff contender with the level of speed and the way that this team has performed the last couple of months. Thank you, everybody, for taking time out of your days, your weeks, and your lives for listening. I know it's football season. College football all day Saturday. NFL opening Sunday is this Sunday. Still find some time to watch NASCAR. There's plenty of TV screens, plenty of apps you can watch. Get 4 or 5 screens out there. Use your phone. Watch multiple things at the same time. I'm going to be watching a lot of football. I'll definitely keep my eyes on this race. It is the NASCAR playoffs after all. But yeah, find a couch and watch sports. This is one of the best weekends to do it. It's the first weekend of NFL season. Everybody has hope. Everybody has a reason to be excited. So take advantage of that. Watch. There's some good college football games this week. Tune into them as well. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Come follow me on X. I was firing off some tweets about the Phillies and the Eagles game. Sorry this is coming a day later, but I want to leave at least one day in between my NFL and my NASCAR episodes going forward. So put that in the comments if you want to see Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your families. Peace out.